Doc Rivers, the coach of the Los Angeles Clippers, was let go. The official statement said it was a mutual parting of the ways. But, Rob, you know how this works. He was fired. And 7 seasons with the Clippers, Doc is generally viewed as one of the top coaches in the league. And some are wondering, was this justified, Rob? It was justified. I'm sorry. I like Doc Rivers like everybody else. But, he's been there 7 years with championship talent. 2 different regimes. First, Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, and DeAndre Jordan. And some nice role players. Shooters like J.J. Redick and, guys like that. And he doesn't get them past the second round, blows a 3-1 lead to Houston in the playoffs in 2015. And then this year, come on. You and I thought, like probably more than half of the basketball world, that the Clippers were going to win the championship. And Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, all the role players, and they don't get past the second round. And Rob, I've had a lot of faith in Doc. When he first went to the Clippers that first year, I predicted they win the championship. And then this year, of course, I predicted they win the championship. And, of course, both times they didn't even get to the conference finals. He was brought in. He replaced Vinny Del Negro. The knock on Vinny was they couldn't get past the second round. And because he won 56 regular season games, Vinny. And Doc was brought in to get him further. And obviously he didn't. So this is very justified, Rob. I think they made the right move.
I don't think you could blame Steve Ballmer at all. First of all, when somebody buys a franchise, they have a right to clean house and get rid of everybody who was not hired by them, right? They took over a situation, and he kept Doc on. He went out. He got Doc everything that you would need to win a championship. It didn't happen. And if you can't get fired after a 3-1 choke, then I don't know what you can get fired off.
Right.
It's just that simple. And so people will say, Steve Kerr choked and they were up 3-1, but they had already won a championship.
Right.
That buys you time. Had Steve Kerr,
Absolutely.
Chris, had they not won and they won 73 games and didn't win and choked a 3-1 lead in the finals and never won, Steve Kerr wouldn't still be coaching that team. I guarantee you that.
Well, and to your point, Steve Kerr, like you said, had won a championship.
He had already won.
Like, Doc hasn't gotten him past the second round. As you said, you had everything to compete for a championship. I'm not saying he had to win the championship, but you could have gotten to the finals. If Doc had gotten to 1 or 2 finals with either the Chris Paul group or this group, I know this was the first year together, it'd be a different story. They have not gotten past the second round. And I know there were some injuries, in fairness to Doc. Blake's hurt here. Chris is hurt there. But still, they blew several big-time leads. Doc's the only coach in history, Robbie, the first time well. You were in Detroit. He's blown 3 3-1 leads. He's the only coach in NBA history to do that.
That's always the great story about Tracy McGrady, who also couldn't, get out of the second round, right?
Yep.
Did he ever get?
No, he never won a series.
He never won
a playoff series.
And that was the first year they went from 3 out of 5 to 4 out of 7 in that playoff. And so they beat the Pistons 3 of the first 4 games. And Tracy McGrady, talking to the media, says, boy, it's great to get out of the first round and move on.
Were you there when he said it?
No, he was talking to the Orlando writers. And they were like, what? What are you talking about? They said, no. It's 4 out of 7. You got to win one more game. And he looked and said, what? He thought he had won and moved on.
Yep.
And the Pistons came back and won the next 3 games, and then the rest is history.
And the rest is history because, Rob, they lost 19 straight. I think they started 1-10 the next season, and Doc was fired in Orlando. Now, Doc had done a good job in Orlando, and I tell you what, there's kind of a pattern with Doc. When he was in Orlando, they didn't have much, talent. And they had Tracy McGrady, and that was about it. Because remember, Grant Hill was hurt, and Doc, they were good. They made the playoffs. They kind of were viewed as that kind of overachieving little engine that could, right? And then with the Clippers, the only 2 years he didn't underachieve and actually overachieved, Rob, was 2 years ago. Remember, you were so high on him.
No, last year.
Last year when they took Golden State to 6.
And they
didn't
won
have
2
any
games in
stars.
Oakland.
Yeah,
right. I said that was his best coaching job.
Yep. And the year before, too, was kind of similar, once they lost Chris Paul. So you wonder now, of course, he won the championship with the team in Boston with
And
Kevin
we're not going to
Garnett.
take that away from him. He won it. He was the coach.
He did a great job that year. I mean, look, we saw it with Miami and Dallas. I'm sorry, with Miami with their first year when LeBron
trying to
D-Wade,
put pieces together and win
couldn't
your
win
first
it the
year.
first year. This year couldn't win. The Clippers couldn't win it the first year. It is. I mean, even last year, I know LeBron was hurt, but they didn't even make the playoffs. The Lakers coming together first time, so it is tough. So Doc should definitely be credited with that first championship, which was great. I went with that team overseas to training camp in Rome and other parts of Europe. And he did a great job. He had them saying Ubuntu, which was an African word. I think it meant together or something like that. But yeah, we all do it together, something like that. But he did a great job. But I always thought that team left a championship on the table, Rob. Because they kept the big three together for a few years and never won another ring. Now, I had tended to blame Danny Ainge for trading Kendrick Perkins. Remember, that team never, with Kendrick Perkins, they never lost the series. I know Kendrick wasn't like some superstar, but it's chemistry. And I thought that was a shaky trade. But they still, they didn't win another championship. But it'll be interesting. Here's the thing, Rob. Well, 2 things to talk about. Who do you think should be the replacement? And then, there's already reports that Philadelphia and New Orleans, who have coaching vacancies, have reached out to Doc already. Look, if I'm Philadelphia, it's championship or bust. I don't think I'm going for Doc right away. Because Doc has shown like he had 2 really great regimes with the Clippers for 7 years and didn't get anything done. I don't think I'd go that route.
I'm not just. I wouldn't say that you shouldn't make a phone call just to hear where his head is, Chris. You know what I'm saying? A phone call is your due diligence. Do you know what I'm saying? Like seriously. That's all. Because if you don't make that, just let's put it out there. You don't make that phone call and you're Philadelphia and New Orleans hires Doc Rivers and they get to the NBA championship. Do you know what I mean? No, I'm just saying you didn't do your due diligence. It doesn't mean that you have to hire them. I made a call. I didn't like where his head was. Do you know what I mean? And you can justify. That's all I'm saying. So, but I'm with you. I think it's hard if you're a general manager to be able to introduce Doc Rivers at a press conference. I just, not coming off of what just went down, I think that's a hard sell to a fan base to bring in a guy who had this team and roster and expectations, and it blew up in his face. Not like you just got swept and you weren't good enough. You were up 3-1 and you choked.
Well, that's the thing.
That's the difference. There's a difference. If Denver had beaten them, beaten them outright, you couldn't knock it. Denver's a good team, Chris. They were the number 3 seed. Yep. It ain't like that they weren't good.
Maybe they were better. Yeah.
Exactly. Or maybe they had more time. The year before they lost in Game 7. You remember? Trying to get to the Western Conference Final. You could have made a case. But to be up 3-1 and not be able to win a game with the talent and the roster you have, that's got to go on the coach. And, yes, the players didn't play well, but you can't have it both ways. Had Doc won,
he would have got his flowers.
He would have.
Flowers, yep.
And he would have been the first coach to get them to the Clippers to the Western Conference Finals. And that would be on his record. That would be a star.
That would have sealed his Hall of Fame candidacy.
Yes.
He may get in anyway, but he I hear you on that. And I gotta be honest, I thought Doc got out coached against Dallas by Rick Carlisle. And I thought he got out-coached against Denver with Mike Malone. So we'll see. I mean, Doc I would imagine he'll be in the broadcast booth if he's not coaching. He was a great broadcaster when he wasn't coaching, so he'll be fine. The question of replacement. Now, look, I hate to do this because I always throw out Mark Jackson, Rob. I mean, for many of these jobs, I tend to throw out Mark Jackson because I think he's a good coach. I think he did a good job in Golden State. Now, Steve Kerr, admittedly, took him to a whole nother level. But Mark did do a pretty good job there before Kerr. But I don't think he's going to get it.
He doesn't even get an interview, Chris.
No, he's totally like
you can't get
off
hired
the grid.
if you.
It's unfortunate.
I
think it should probably be Ty Lue. Look, nobody knows who's, you know what I mean? Like, and Ty Lue did a good job in Cleveland. They obviously had LeBron, okay. But so did Eric Spoelstra. Eric Spoelstra had more talent than T. Lue had in Cleveland. And Spoelstra was victimized by the same thing, Rob. A lot of people didn't think he was all that great, including me. I thought he was solid when he had LeBron and those guys. They won 2 of 4. That's not spectacular, right?
That's pedestrian to me, considering the talent
they had. But now he's proving that he really is a good coach. Obviously, it's many years later. But Ty Lue, I think I would be fine if Ty Lue gets it. Phil Jackson's name was thrown out there by Chris Mannix, I believe. Not as a report like this is in the works, but just what about Phil? But I don't know that Phil could even physically do it.
Phil can't even. They said he couldn't even
fly,
travel.
Right?
He can't travel.
Yeah,
I mean,
that
come on,
makes
man.
no
I just
sense.
that makes no sense. Did you see what I just sent you that Mark Spears tweeted out, Chris? Did you look at it or no?
No, let me go ahead and tell me what it is.
That basically the NBA. I'm just curious. He tweeted out that at black NBA coaches remaining in the NBA, Bickerstaff, Dwayne Casey, Lloyd Pierce, and Monty Williams. Black coaches fired in 2020. Doc, Nate McMillan, Alvin Gentry. Black coaches hired in 2020, 0. NBA players, 75% black. That's surprising that no black coaches have been hired.
Yeah. I was a little surprised that Chicago went with Billy Donovan. Look, there was a point, Rob, I think they had 13 black coaches in the NBA out of 30. I think that was a high mark, yeah. But obviously it's a low now. I don't think anything untoward is in the works.
I'm just saying.
Other than that, the analytics, there's a lot of guys that feel like the whole analytics revolution.
Well, that's in the front office to push all those guys out who played. Were the Clippers, did they do the right thing in firing Doc Rivers? Was he to blame? Was it the players? Did the Clippers get this right? Or will they regret the day that they let Doc Rivers go? In Mississippi, you're on the Odd Couple, Fox Sports Radio. What's up?
Hey, what's up, Uncle Rob, man? I hope everybody blessed at the Odd Couple. Hope Chris get everything together. But
yes, thank you.
Yeah, I believe the firing was justified, to be honest. Doc is in the books for 2 bad things, blowing 2-3-1 lead. I don't really think he's developed his players like he should have. Like year over year, I think they remained consistent, if not fell off somewhat. And I think he had a better team in, that first stint with the Clippers than he did in Boston. And he never got out the second round. And I don't know. I just don't feel like, I think he needs somebody to take him over the top, a new coach, but it's going to be hard to replace him.
No doubt about it, because there aren't guys, Marcel, with a championship in their back pocket. You can say whatever you want. There's very few guys who are still young enough to coach. Everybody else holding a championship trophy is 80 years old or can't fly or can't travel. So Doc Rivers is going to be one of those guys with a championship trophy without a job for right now. Joseph in Virginia, you're on the Odd Couple, Fox Sports Radio. What's up, Joseph?
Good evening. Shout out to the fellas on the board. Rob, I had to say, it's kind of like the Nutty Professor, and I don't mean the original one that you were around for with Jerry Lewis.
What do you know about Jerry Lewis? What do you know?
But I'm talking about the one with Eddie Murphy. You remember Professor Clump and Buddy Love?
Yes.
I just feel like the Los Angeles Lakers are always going to be Buddy Love. And the Clippers will always be that little brother downstairs in the basement.
Yeah, but I'm going to say this, Joseph. I get that point about what you're saying, but that had nothing to do with why they lost. And it's always going to be a Laker town. I get that. It's just like New York with the Yankees, and I get that. Those things never really change. You'll have your day in the sun like the Mets had for some years, but they never fully break through and become the team that everybody looks to. But that wouldn't have stopped them from winning a championship this year.
I don't know about that, but logically it makes sense because they did clean house, and he is the only one that was left over from that past regime.
Yes, and that's the other part that you have to understand is they could have just cleaned everybody out and they let Doc stay. So appreciate the call, Joseph. Robert in South Carolina, you're on the Odd Couple, Fox Sports Radio. What's up, Robert?
Hey, what's up, Rob? Tell Chris to get it together over there, man. I know it ain't his fault. I'm just
you know what? You know what I think happened is Dak Prescott kicked the plug out after he threw another pick. Oh, I'm sorry.
He probably did. But check it out, Rob. I think Doc tries to straddle the fence too much, man. I think what that group of players needed was somebody that was going to be hard on them and somebody that wasn't going to let them cut corners and miss practice and miss games for this, that, and the third. I think Doc tries to be a player's coach too much, and when it's time to dig in somebody, he can't really do it. Those timeouts that they were taking when the Nuggets were running wild on him and they didn't have an answer for him, if you saw Doc, and I'm not a big Skip Bayless fan, but I'm going to remind myself of something that Skip always said about Jason Garrett, Coach Clapp. All you saw Doc doing was clapping, shaking his head like, yeah, we'll get it together. No, it was time for you to jump in somebody then, but you can't because you're always friends with them and you're always the player's coach. He needs to change his approach when he has teams of that caliber. He needs to change his approach, period.
I think that's fair. I can't argue with it. Can we squeeze in Thomas in Iowa? Thomas, you got to make it quick. You're on the Odd Couple, Fox Sports Radio.
All right. Hey, how you doing, man? Big fan of your show.
Thank you.
Hey, just bringing this up to you. What if LeBron James got him fired? The jealousy of perhaps a parade or another banner being raised up in the Staples Center?
Nah, I don't think so. Thanks for the call, Thomas. They lost for one reason. They were supposed to win and at least get to the finals with the roster they put together, and it didn't happen. I mean, if you can't get fired on a 3-1 choke, dude, you can never get fired.